I never imagined that one quiet evening at home, sipping tea while waiting for my husband to return, would lead me down a path that would change everything. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. My name is Rachel. I'm 48 years old and have been married for nearly 25 years to a wonderful man named David. Our life is comfortable, built on routine, shared memories, and a love that has matured over time. David is a senior manager at a reputable firm, and though he often shares stories from the office, I never paid much attention until recently. It all started with an offhand comment he made at dinner. "You wouldn't believe the day I had," David said, loosening his tie as he sat across from me. "Ethan pulled off something incredible today. The whole office is still talking about it." I raised an eyebrow. Ethan. I'd heard his name before, one of David's closest colleagues, a younger man in his early 40s who had joined the company a few years ago. David always spoke highly of him, smart, ambitious, charming, well liked by everyone. "What happened?" I asked, intrigued. David leaned back, shaking his head in disbelief. He stood up to the regional director in the middle of a meeting, told him flat out that his restructuring plan was flawed, and he had the numbers to back it up. He practically saved the department from a disaster. I sipped my tea, impressed. "That's bold." "It was more than bold," David said, admiration evident in his voice. "It was gutsy. No one else dared to speak up, but Ethan just laid it all out there. I have to say, I respect the guy even more now." I had never met Ethan in person, but hearing David talk about him with such enthusiasm piqued my curiosity. I pictured him as confident, unshaken, and sure of himself, a man who stood his ground. And for the first time in all these years, I actually thought about one of David's colleagues beyond just a passing mention. A week later, David and I attended a corporate event at a luxury venue downtown. I wasn't particularly looking forward to it, but I knew it meant a lot to him. I wore a deep blue dress, elegant yet understated. As we stepped into the ballroom, I felt the familiar mix of excitement and discomfort that came with being surrounded by unfamiliar faces. David introduced me to a few colleagues, exchanging pleasantries, and then suddenly, I found myself standing in front of Ethan. "Rachel, meet Ethan. Ethan, this is my wife," David said with a smile. Ethan turned to me, and for a brief moment, I felt something unexpected, a subtle, almost magnetic energy in the way he looked at me. His dark eyes held a warmth that was both inviting and disarming. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Rachel," he said smoothly, extending his hand. His voice was calm, steady, filled with quiet confidence. As I shook his hand, the warmth of his palm against mine lingered for just a second too long. "The pleasure is mine," I replied, hoping my voice didn't betray the sudden awareness I felt. As the evening progressed, I found myself drawn into conversations where Ethan was present. He was charming but not overbearing, intelligent without arrogance. What struck me most was his attentiveness, the way he truly listened when I spoke, how his responses felt genuine rather than just polite small talk. At one point, David was pulled into a discussion across the room, leaving me alone with Ethan. "You don't seem like someone who enjoys these corporate events," he observed with a knowing smile. I laughed softly. "That obvious, huh?" He nodded. "I get it. They can be exhausting. But I will say, your presence here means a lot to David. He talks about you often." Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten, not in discomfort, but in a way that made me feel seen. "He does?" I asked, tilting my head slightly. "Of course," Ethan said. "The way he speaks about you, it's clear how much he loves and admires you." I should have felt flattered, maybe even moved, but there was something deeper beneath his words, a layer I couldn't quite place. A strange tension hummed between us, not inappropriate, not wrong, but undeniably present. I forced a smile and changed the subject, unwilling to linger on the feeling. But even as the night went on, I couldn't shake the awareness. The way his eyes seemed to find me in the room, the subtle shift in energy whenever we were near each other. A week later, something happened that brought all those lingering thoughts to the surface. David had forgotten an important file at home, something he needed for a morning meeting. Since I had some free time, I offered to drop it off at his office. I had been there before but never stayed long. As I handed the file to his assistant, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Rachel. I turned and found myself face to face with Ethan. There it was again, that shift in the air, the sudden awareness. He wasn't in a suit like the night of the event, just a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking effortlessly composed. I didn't expect to see you here, he said, his expression warm but tinged with something else. I was just dropping off something for David, I replied, trying to keep my voice light. He studied me for a moment, then gestured toward the nearby coffee machine. You have a minute? I was just about to grab some coffee. I hesitated. I should have said no. I should have smiled politely and left. But instead, I nodded. Sure. We stepped into a quieter corner of the office, away from the hum of conversations and ringing phones. Ethan handed me a cup, and as I took a sip, I felt his gaze on me. I meant what I said at the event, he said after a moment. I looked up, confused. About what? About David loving you, he said. Then, after a pause, he added, but I also meant that you don't seem like someone who's seen the way you deserve to be. His words landed with a weight I wasn't prepared for. I should have been offended. I should have shut it down. But instead, my heart pounded in my chest. Because deep down, I knew exactly what he meant. And that was the moment everything changed.